Looking around, I finally see I think I need a change. The rat race, I wanna flee, my world I'll rearrange. I'm getting back to the roots of how it's meant to be. Growing gardens, picking fruit, racing livestock, living free. It's a modern homestead. Build a modern homestead.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. My name is Harold Thornborough, and I'm glad you're joining me today. And I'm joined today by Mandy Roth of, is it Evergreen Homestead?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I've seen that. I think you've changed it a couple times over the years. It seems like you had a different name at one point.
Yeah, it was Evergreen Homestead, and then I just took the homestead off of it because we have
Okay.
So it was just easier to register with a shorter farm name.
Okay, I thought I seen something different. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I wanted you on because you're doing some pretty cool things. You know, I've been following you on Instagram for a long time, and you're on Instagram a lot. You know, sharing
probably too much.
Is there such a thing? I don't know these days.
Right.
But you're sharing a lot of cool stuff, and I mean, you got a lot going on. You're pretty young, and you're doing a lot of cool things, and I just think that's pretty fascinating and encouraging. And I just wanted to have you on and talk a little bit about it because I think it's pretty cool. So, why don't you just take a few minutes here and just kind of tell us about yourself and kind of how you got heading down this path.
Well, I mean, I grew up in Pennsylvania, up in Northwest Pennsylvania. You know, I was pretty poor growing up. I sang Coal Miner's Daughter at our wedding because that song reminds me of the way that I grew up so much. I mean, we had a really old pre-Civil War house and just not a lot of money to do things. My mom had 5 kids. So she was always just trying to like make do with what we had and make food from scratch. She always had a garden. She dabbled in all kinds of different things. She was like all over the place. Like we had fruit trees, we had sheep, goats, a horse that we never did anything with, just a bunch of different animals for various things. And she cooked from scratch, canned, did all that kind of stuff. So I learned a lot of it from her. I call her every time I'm canning just because I'm like, I need help. And she's 6.5 hours away. So
yeah,
a little bit far, but
so you're in Indiana now.
Yes. Yeah. We moved from Pittsburgh in 2020. Actually, it was January 2020. We moved here and we were on like a suburban lot in Pittsburgh. And then when we moved here, we got 3 acres and we knew right away, like it was February. My husband was out there tilling up a little 10 by 10 plot to put our garlic that we brought from our old garden.
Oh yeah.
So
you're doing a little bit of urban homesteading there then, huh?
Yes. Oh yeah. We had a garden there. Yep. My mom lived with us for a little while and she was helping us get that going. And we had chickens for a little while. Then we found out we weren't allowed to have chickens and they made us get rid of them. So that was sad. So when we moved here, we had to make sure everything was unincorporated and we could pretty much have, whatever we wanted. And so we did. And, now we have chickens and goats and all that.
Yeah, you got a lot going on now. Yeah. Well, well, I just kind of like to go through a little bit of everything you're doing. Well, first, let's talk about gardening, and you're working on building a food forest, right?
Yes. I dove really deep into, I wouldn't say really deep because I'm still completely new to it, but I'm constantly watching videos and reading things and just kind of, I like food. I'm a fan of food. So like, I was like, if I could just walk around our yard, just like picking things to eat, that's like my goal, Yeah,
I love that part of it.
Yeah. So, and then obviously the whole aspect of everything working together. Everything's still pretty spaced out, but I have a couple small spots where I'm trying to like integrate more of, like different things that work together. So, like I have some rhubarb, I have comfrey because you always talk about comfrey.
Yeah.
So I have to start splitting that up, but it's really pretty around the fruit trees too, I have to say.
I like it because it comes up. It's one of the first things that comes up in flowers. And so the bees are all over it. And it just kind of fills in a spot really quick in the spring, which is another thing I really like about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, so do you have now you're working on a food forest, but do you have some like traditional garden space too? Like more of just rotilled out? I mean, you said your husband was kind of rototilling out of the spot. And
so we got really lucky because we're one of the few people, like I've met a couple people here. I have friends now and all of that. And they'll have sand in their yard. Like my one friend, it's almost like she lives on a sand dune. And our soil was like just dark, rich, like perfect for a garden. So we started off tilling, and now we're trying to like mulch more and like get things covered and do less tilling. But we did the first probably 2 years that we were here.
Well, you're up in northwest Indiana, and it's they got like sand dunes up there.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. I was when we came to visit, we were walking on like nature trails, and I was like, "Is that sand?" Because like you don't see that in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
It's all like you got like a thin layer of topsoil, and then it's all just like clay.
Yeah, you go further south in Indiana, you don't see that either. Up where you're at, definitely. Yeah,
it was like a whole other world.
So, well, kind of walk us around your little food forest design. Kind of just tell us what you got like you're building guild. Are you just going like one guild at a time? Or are you just kind of dumping trees everywhere and then slowly trying to incorporate things? Or what are you doing there?
Well, so we went kind of crazy with getting all the trees first because that was like our bigger expense.
Sure.
And so we have tons of apple trees, peach trees, pear trees, plum trees, cherry trees. Most of them are still in a very young stage. But we do have a really old apple tree that gives us just hundreds of pounds of apples, and a really old pear tree that gives us tons of pears.
That's nice.
So, and then this year,
that came with the property.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this year I added I always say it wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's a native plum tree. I always want to say a wild plum, but it's like, it's supposed to be like native to our area, even though I haven't really heard people talking about it here. But when I looked it up, it said it was native to this area. So I threw a couple of those in and some gooey berries and different things like that. So I'm getting there.
Yeah. Sounds like it. Are you starting to put in your herbs and things yet around in your guilds, or are you just pretty much just
not yet? I didn't realize that certain things do overwinter here. So like my husband went to pull the sage out last year, and my friend was like, "Don't do it; it'll overwinter." And I was like, "Oh, don't do it." So we had a half of a sage plant, and it survived. So
you were telling me, because I've been talking on the podcast about how my fig tree looked like it died, but now I had actually on another podcast. I guess you hadn't heard it yet because you'd messaged me and said, "Hey, did you hear about it? Those come back where we're at?" And sure enough, it is. And it's several inches tall now. It's probably it's close to a foot tall around the base where it's popping out around the from the roots. And I mean, I was kind of surprised by that because I thought for sure I lost it, but it's grown back. And you were telling me about it because you have fig tree as well, or some fig trees, and they're doing the exact same thing. So they overwinter here, but they kind of come back from the ground up. So it's a good thing it's a fast growing tree, I guess.
Very true. Yeah. And I planted some new ones next to my house because I want to see if that makes a difference, because there could be some heat coming off the house. I don't know how, like, distance wise, how far that would have to be, for that to like make it like a little microclimate, but it's also got a little bit more of a windbreak there versus on the other side of a goat fence area where I have it. It's completely open to all the wind and snow and like all that. So I'm doing an experiment to see which one works better.
It's a constant experiment. Everything is, isn't it? Yeah, that's kind of the way I live my life on the homestead. It's like everything's an experiment. Like I'm growing water chestnuts, and I was worried those weren't going to grow, but now they're blowing up, and it's all new to me. I'm learning all kinds of stuff with that. I'm planting them, and I had to put them in deeper soil and all kinds of stuff, but they look like they're doing really well now. In the
I feel like that's always the way. Too.
I mean,
like,
it don't matter how long you do
and then it's like, no, I'm not really dead. I'm actually alive. Don't give up.
It doesn't matter how long you do this. It's like it's always just new. There's just new things, and it's experimenting and finding better ways to do things. And I'm taking a garden master course right now at Permise, and I'm learning so much stuff in that. And I've been doing this for years, and yet there's just so much to learn. You just learn new stuff every day. It's great.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I've heard you talk about it. I checked it out. I may have to. In my spare time. That's a running joke between me and my husband. In my spare time, I'm going to do this or that because there's never really any spare time. But.
Yeah, right. I'm going through it kind of slow because I'm just, I'm so busy too. Yeah, but you just kind of do it, especially this time of the year. It's just a busy time of the year. Well, so it sounds like you're making a lot of progress there, and you're right. Starting with those younger trees, that really helps. It's a lot. It'll save you a lot of money for sure.
Right.
And and even with herbs and stuff, and what, like with me when I was doing herbs, it's like you start with a few, and then you just have to wait. So you got. And I'll split them, if anything, I can split and divide. And so it takes 3 or 4 years before you start getting a lot of them, but it saves you a lot of money that way. If you don't want to just dump tons of money into it. And most people don't, want to spend everything. I mean, that's how you make it an affordable, thing, homesteading. People who go all out and spend thousands and thousands of dollars setting up their homestead, they have to wait a long time before they really start seeing any ROI on that. And if you can just kind of pace it out and build as you go and try to save money or even do it for free in a lot of ways, That's the way to go. So yeah, you sounds like you're playing it smart there.
Yeah, and I'm always trying to give things away when people come. I'm like, "You sure you don't want a cutting of my blackberry? You sure you don't want this or that? Like, I'll snip it for you. I don't mind."
Yeah, I do the same thing. I've gave away a lot of elderberry and comfrey cuttings and all things to people locally and stuff. And every time I get a chance, because I just figured, especially locally, the more you can encourage that, and you can get other people really homesteading, and you're getting in the habit of sharing things. I mean, you build this community where where you have people that you can rely on for, and say some of your stuff dies or whatever, now you've help them get it going. Now maybe they can share back with you or whatever. So it's good for them, but it's also kind of good in return also to do those kind of things.
Absolutely. We lucked out. We have excellent neighbors. Our one neighbor, they've tried gardening a couple of times, didn't work out, so we're always giving them food. They have like 30 mulberry trees, like wild ones. They let us pick their mulberries. I canned probably, I don't know, 20 jelly jars worth of mulberry jam last year. So I give them that. And they've come over and helped pull my husband out of his lawnmower getting stuck. Because we have like a wet spot in our yard, and it seems like at least once a year he has to come over with his 4-wheeler and pull us out. So it's a great relationship. And, they're just really nice people. And then our other 2 neighbors are gardening and doing wood forest too. So it's great. Wow. It's like we started this whole thing on our street.
Nice. You need to plant some rice in that wet area so you won't have to mow it.
There you go. I thought about that.
I wonder if it would. Yeah.
We have done wheat. We did that the first year we moved here, and I don't know what we were thinking, because like we were still like establishing everything, like putting in the garden and all that. And I'm like, we need to grow wheat this year. And we did everything by hand. We used, I forget what they're called, those big long like knife things, scythes, I think they're called. So like cut it all down, and we like hand threshed it, and like, and then half of it ended up rotting because it was really wet and we didn't have a great place to dry it out. So it was not, but it was still fun because I've always been fascinated by how things work like that. Like we used to go to like bluegrass festivals and Lehman's and different places, and they always had the demonstrations, how things work. So that was I was like, I got to know how this works. And now we know kind of how to do it, where if we had to, we could.
And everything's a process and learning, and there's a system to it. People have figured it out. And I find like I'll mess something up the first time, but then a lot of times I just jump into things without doing a lot of research.
Me too.
And then I just do it, and then it didn't come out quite right. So then I go and do some research and go, okay, I need to do this. And then you learn and you grow. And it's, it's probably not the smartest way to do it, but it's the way I do it. And you learn because you pay a lot.
Absolutely.
You'll definitely pay a lot more attention in trying to learn the right way after you mess it up one time. So
absolutely.
I try not to do that with animals so much, but
I'm the same way.
With the garden. Well, let's talk about your animals a little bit. Now you done said you had chickens. I know you have some other animals, but let's just talk about that a little bit.
So we do have chickens. We also have 2 rabbits that are just pets. I had pet rabbits growing up. We used to go to the fair every year. My mom would let us bring home rabbits. So they're more for the kids and for the garden, obviously.
Yeah, manure.
I've debated whether or not I wanted to go into raising them for meat. I have a friend that lives in Demont, and she does all kinds of stuff. Like she's got the whole farm basically, but she raises hers for meat. So eventually, when we're not busy, we're going to come together, and I'm going to help her do that so that I can kind of see whether or not it's something that I'm going to be able to do. But I wanted to do that before I just got to that I wanted to start breeding and do all that. And then we have goats.
Okay, let's talk about your chickens for a minute. Are they just egg layers or meat chickens, or
no, just egg layers?
Egg layers. Okay.
Yeah. It's just chickens take so long to process if you're doing it completely by hand. And if you're not, and you're buying the plucker and all that, it gets expensive. I know you can rent them. It's all about like time management, and like we only have so much, so it's hard to.
Yeah, I know there's down here where I live, there's actually an Amish farm, and people will take their chickens to them and they'll process them for like real cheap per bird, and bag them and everything. And they get them all.
Awesome.
They'll just haul like 100 chickens to them, and they'll process them and give them back to them and pay them. And they don't have to mess with, doing all that. Yeah. And that's kind of cool. So, I mean, there's other ways around it if you didn't want to buy all the equipment in some areas.
Yeah, we looked up here and there really isn't. And I don't know if it's just because there's not a lot of money into it. Like I've asked on the Homesteaders Vinny in a Facebook group, and they pretty much, it was more like down where you are, like more south.
Yeah.
So
well, a lot of them people don't really, a lot of those folks don't really advertise either. It's just, it's kind of word of mouth in the area, and then they figure it out. But so I've been seeing a lot of posts about your goats. You got goats. Sounds like you're really proud of them goats. Let's talk about
those. That's my life right now. because I decided to do bottle feeding. That's kind of a debate, whether you want to do dame raise or bottle feeding. And I grew up with my mom dame raising, and it was like she'd have the baby with them, but then ultimately they'd end up having to be separated anyways. And I remember them just crying and crying and crying. And it just broke my heart. So I was like, we're just going to go straight bottle, just take them away right away. And honestly, they really didn't, there was no issues, which I'm sure my neighbors were happy about. Now,
what kind of goats do you have?
But what's that?
What kind of goats do you have?
Nigerian dwarf.
Nigerian dwarf. Okay. Yeah. So for milk, then you're going to be.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, great. So you'll be breeding and and having milk and cream and all the good stuff. And
Yep.
all right. Okay. What is that? So what's the plan? Are you hoping to maybe sell goats at some point, or just using them for the products, or what's the game plan?
So
there?
We had our first breeding season this year, and I immediately started trying to get them sold because I didn't want to get attached, because I knew if I got attached to them, they were not going to go anywhere. We only have 3 acres. So I was like, we got to keep it consolidated. So we're keeping one, and we sold the rest. So
okay.
But nobody wants them until they're done on the bottle, because nobody wants to bottle feed. So I'm bottle feeding all of them. Thankfully, they're down to twice a day, not 3 times a day anymore, which is nice. But but that'll be done. They'll all be gone probably by the end of July.
So you want to keep that. You're going to keep that pretty small scale then, and just have just a small crowd. How much of your 3 acres are you dedicating to roaming area for them?
I asked my husband that last night, and he wasn't exactly sure, but he thinks it was around 5,000 square feet.
Okay.
We're eventually going to expand their pasture, but for right now, like, we have part of it as forage and part of it is just grass. So we're going to see the rest of it. And then I'd like to eventually, just kind of in the bigger gaps in our yard where there's not a bunch of fruit trees, kind of have more fences where we could just kind of rotate their pastures.
Sure.
But for right now, it's just all permanent setup.
Well, sounds like it's all coming together. I mean, you got the garden, the food forest, the animals. Are you really started kind of tying all those things together? I mean, you're obviously using the manure. Have you tried tractoring chickens or doing anything like integrating them into the actual food forest or anything like that? Yeah.
Not yet, but I definitely want to. My uncle, I think I told you about him. He lives in Baltimore, and he's doing like the guerrilla garden thing where he just takes a random piece of land and grows stuff, and he's raising quail and doing all that stuff. And he was like, you need a chicken tractor, you need to get quail and do this and that, take your bunnies out in the go. So I'm like, I know, I got to build this stuff to do the stuff. And
it's time. Not everybody wants to do it, but I was just wondering if it was something you were thinking about or something you were planning on. I mean, generally when people get into permaculture, they really start looking at the integration of those things and trying to tie them directly together, because it becomes a labor saving rather than move the manure to the garden. You just let them put it directly in the garden and things like that. And it's just, or letting them work land for you, like putting the chickens over an area that you're going to turn into garden, or something like that, and get it kind of prepared for you so you can use them in those ways too. So, well, I mean, so it sounds like how long have you been at this property in Indiana?
Since 2020.
Okay. So you've been there a little while then. So you're getting lots of produce in and stuff. So you're canning and preserving and doing all those things as well too then, huh?
Yep. That's my fall, basically. We do green beans, and then the rest is all in the fall. Salsa, sauces, all of it,
Right. Yeah.
So.
How you like that? I mean, you feel like you're really called to doing all this? I mean, is it, any part of it you say, I just don't really like this part of it, or you just kind of absorbing it all and just enjoying it?
I think I do enjoy it. I mean, when it gets really busy and overwhelming, sometimes I'm like, why am I doing this? What am I doing with my life? But for the most part, I really do enjoy every aspect of it. It was hard for me when I moved to Pittsburgh from where I grew up, because I was in Pittsburgh. So I was in this, not like in the city, but just outside of it. So like going from seeing the stars at night, everything being quiet, to that busyness, like getting back here and being able to really connect back to the way that I was raised and doing the things that my mom did. And it kind of helped me kind of see like how her mindset when I was growing up, because now I have my own kids, and I'm kind of, because she always felt like she was in 2 different worlds. Because like we went to public school, and she was going to the Amish store and buying like patterns to make Amish dresses and wearing her Amish dresses. Yeah. So, and then we were going to like baseball and different sports and stuff. So it was like, now I'm kind of understanding what she's saying, because my kids go to public school. So it's like, I go to baseball and they're like, oh, hi, what do you do? And I'm like, I have goats. And they're like, oh, for pets. And I'm like, no, for milk. And they're like, oh, it's just kind of like, it's just not really a normal thing. So I'm kind of like always in between, but I do really enjoy it.
We're on a mission to make it normal.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's right. Well, it sounds okay. So, you kind of grew up that way, and it sounds like it was more of a have to situation. Like it was for food, and it's kind of a poor situation. So you kind of, but it doesn't sound like it's the reason you do it now. It's just more out of enjoyment and maybe for healthy food for your kids, or you just want to introduce them to the lifestyle. I'm just trying to get a grip on kind of the reasons you're doing it now.
Yeah, definitely. It's not, we're not like well off, but we don't have to worry about that kind of situation. We're just doing it because we love it. I really just enjoy doing it. Yeah.
And for me, it was like healthy food, and it was, and plus it's a lifestyle I always wanted to live, to be honest, even from a kid. But, everybody's got a different reason. I'm always just curious about people's reasons because it's always different, and there's so many reasons to get into homesteading. And I always just like to hear people's reason. Sometimes it's economic. Sometimes it's, it's just because they want to make a more of an ecological impact, or sometimes it's, the health or whatever. I mean, sometimes just nostalgia because they grew up that way.
Yeah.
They just want to get back to it.
That's more what it is for me. It's just great. Having that connection with, and built a stronger relationship with my mom, just because now, like when I talk to her, I'm sorry if you can hear my dog.
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
Okay. But, we can talk about things now because my mom, unfortunately, is now living in Erie. So she's in the city in Erie, Pennsylvania. So she's talking to me and she's like, oh, I can hear the birds where you're at. And, so she's working on getting back out of the city, but she's doing her thing there too. Her landlord let her take they have a little grassy area next to her apartment, and they said, do whatever you want with it. And there's some grapes already there. So she's calling me, I get to plant a garden again, So I think it makes me feel good because I have that connection again, and I missed that for so long. So
Yeah, for sure. And there was a little bit of that for me too. I grew up that way too. And then I got away from it for several years. So even it was more for health when I first got into it. But I did miss that too. And it did kind of connect me to my youth and the things I would do there. And it was a lot of fun. So are you selling anything right now? Or are you wanting to at some point other than your goats? You say you're selling some newborn goats.
Well, eventually our ultimate goal with the produce from the trees and the fruit and stuff like that is to take to market. So we're trying to pack as many fruit trays as we can for that reason too. And also just to kind of give away, because I love giving things. I love giving food away, when people can come and just say, here, take a basket of apples home, make some applesauce or, and then we wanted to sell some stuff from our garden this year. But honestly, I don't know what is going on with our tomatoes and peppers. But the last 2 years, and we've been gardening for 13 years, the last 2 years, they look like they're on death's door. I don't know what's going on.
They're just not growing big, or they're just not the plants themselves, or are they just not?
So the plants themselves are growing big, but they're real leggy. And we have the same setup that we've always used. The same, we had to change the soil quite a few times because the soil we were using 2 years ago, didn't work anymore. But they're just all different issues. Like some are purple, some are yellow, some are leggy, it's like, there's no okay, if they're all one thing, then I know what I need to do. So
are you growing these in raised beds, or are you growing these in directly in the ground?
Well, once we get them into the garden, they're fine. So it's something in the greenhouse that's happening. And the only thing I can think of is that it's soil, because once we transplant them out, they're like, hallelujah.
Leggy is from a lack of light, but if you're I don't know. Yeah, it could be. So you're using some kind of a bot soil to start them in.
Yeah. We were using Pro Mix, which is supposed to be good soil. That's what I was told. I mean, we can only afford to spend so much on seed starter, so it's kind of hard to, get too much, but I'm hoping they all survive and bounce back, because we want to try a roadside stand and see how that goes first. And then eventually I'd like to just kind of get to know certain people and say, okay, what do you need this week? What do you need this week? And this is what we have, and just kind of do it that way. I think that would be kind of nice, because you get to know people better that way, and you have, a better relationship with the community that way, and you kind of have their back, So that's what I would eventually like to do.
Maybe even a CSA or something at some point.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you got some plans there. And you're well on your way. If you've got that many trees planted and things coming out, I mean, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to sell things there. So yeah, I mean, you make any soaps or do any kind of textile stuff or anything like that, or is it just pretty much garden and animals and that's what you're into?
We do make soap. We don't sell it. I have a really good friend that sells goat milk products. But we've just made it for ourselves because there's a lot of people that sell like soap right now. So I'm kind of like, because we were thinking about it. We were like really close to like being like, let's just, set up a table somewhere and see what happens. But I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever get into that or not, but we do make it for ourselves and it's really nice.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're well on your way to be able to just to like meet that dream of yours and just walk around the property and have all this food all around you that you can just kind of take and eat and give away yourself if you want to, but just have that. I mean, I love that. I mean, I tell you what, that is definitely one of my greatest joys in life is just to stroll around the property and pick this and eat that and just, and I'll just take a cup of coffee with me and just kind of walk around. And I don't have you got way more land than I have, even at 3 acres. And I can just spend hours doing that. You just kind of walk around the property and just looking at everything. And I mean, I was out there just picking some radishes already, and I actually took you in the house and cooked them up. Cause I like, if you ever eat like fried radishes or any, once they're cooked, they're so much better when they're cooked. They're for years. I just ate raw radish. I just slice them up and drop in a salad or whatever. And then I started like figuring out, or I think I just heard at some point, y'all try, roasting them or frying them or something like that. And it's like, it's a completely different food when you do that. It's amazing. So so I took some of those in the house just today and had that for lunch. So, I mean, it's nice to be able to just, even this early in the year, to be able to kind of walk around and grab some things. And
I do that all the time. My husband laughs at me because I'm like, do you want to walk the yard with me? Because we do. We just, he'll get a beer and I'll get a beer, glass of wine. And we just,
Yeah. I used to I'd get off work and just kind of stroll around and pick some side dishes for the dinner, or whatever in the evening. And it was just, it's nice, and
you really see things changing when you do that too. You really see, oh, that woke up or this woke up or that, oh, a branch broke on that. I wonder if the critter's getting over there. Like you really get to see everything come alive and go back to sleep and see the full circle of everything.
Sure. Well, you were talking about soil a minute ago. So do you guys compost or anything right now? I mean, do you have compost?
Yet.
Okay. So
we spent the first 2 years or the last 2 years, we built one barn and then I wanted the barn bigger. So then we added on to it. And so we've really been like, that was like our main, it took a lot of time. Like we spent all winter doing the addition and we got it finished just in time for the babies. So, but probably next year, like we want to do projects that won't take as long as building an entire barn. Like I want to do a 3-bin compost system where I can, move it and break it down and
keep feeding that soil and get better soil over time. Yeah. Cause I find, every year I'm definitely considering myself as much of a soil farmer as I am a homesteader or a gardener, because you're just really what you're doing is just trying to grow this really good soil, because if you have this really good soil, you can grow anything in it. And so it's just constantly trying to have a better soil, and that's one thing I like about that gardening course. I'm taking really a heavy focus on feeding that soil and getting a really good nutrient rich soil that the plants can uptake those things it needs. And I've been just learning tons in that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool to think of it in big picture, what you can add to compost, what you can do with like cover crops, what you can do with mulch. I mean, just all these things to really feed a soil. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, I didn't know if you was getting into any of that yet. So what's the future of Evergreen Winds Homestead? I mean, where are you going with this? I mean, just where you're at. I mean, you have more animals in the plan. You have obviously a more dense, fuller food forest, but is there, where else we going?
I don't really know at this point.
Well, you don't have to. You don't have to. I was just wondering if you had plans.
I don't have a 5-year plan. I probably should. I tend to just kind of do stuff. And then if I feel like I'm being pulled one way or another, I just know like when we moved here, before we moved, I knew we were getting goats. Like I got the goat book. And then we moved in and my husband was like, okay, well, we'll consider getting goats. Cause I had goats growing up and I adored them, just not even for what they give, but just as animals. Yeah. And he's like, if we can get all through these bins that we had stacked in our garage, then we'll consider it. And I was like, done, cause I'm not working anymore since we moved here. So I got through all of them and I was like, so we can get the goats now, so, and then we did. And But yeah, so
Well,
I mean,
yeah, I love that. I mean, it's no pressure. I think it's great that
yeah,
you're just kind of living in the moment, enjoying what you have, kind of feeling fulfilled in it. And then
yeah.
if you want something else, you move on to something else or, add something else. But I love it that you're kind of content with where you're at and where you're, kind of what you're building right now. And you don't really have a big plan to expand or, make anything different than where you're already heading. And I think that's kind of great. I wish I was that content with myself. I'm always thinking way ahead. Like, I wish I could do this. I'm going to do that. And I'm wanting to build.
Well, I was before we moved here. I mean, I was going to do woodworking stuff because I started getting into wood carving and wood staining, and I was really interested in that. And then we moved here, and I was just like, we need to put in a garden. So we put the garden in, and then my husband was like, how big do you want it? And I was like, we need to make it as big as possible. It was like, I just knew that like certain things were going to need to be there. And then all of a sudden, 2 months later, COVID hit, and we had all of it in. We had the whole garden fenced in, and all the beds were prepped. And I was like, we're going to be fine. So, that was like my strong feeling. And then after that, I just been watching permaculture and listening to your podcast.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Taking all that in for now. So
yeah, I love where you're at with it. Now, I kind of want to bring this up. It seems like you have a pretty strong focus because you are on Instagram a lot and you're sharing a lot of things that you're doing. It sounds like maybe you have a lot of focus on community building or even education or trying to just inspire others to do it. I mean, where's that?
Definitely
where's your heart?
More the inspirer.
Yeah.
Like when you get into teaching, like, because, I always say that like a Google gardener is going to know more than I do because I just kind of do things. So like, I had people telling me that I could not plant poppy seeds and start them inside, but every year that I tried outside direct sowing, they didn't work. So I tried it indoors and it worked. And I was like, well, it can be done, but I don't want to argue with somebody online about it,
Right. Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, you should try this. That's kind of this is what I'm doing. You should try it. Don't necessarily do it the way I'm doing it, but see if it works.
I'm the same way. I don't do things maybe the way people want to do them or whatever, but I just kind of do it. And if it works, it works, and it may not be the perfect
I
way,
actually figured this out and it went all the way through.
Yeah. Well, it does seem like you have a passion for inspiring others to do it or even helping them if they are doing it, if they're looking for answers. And I mean, you're definitely on there a lot. Like I said, trying to, just kind of spread the passion for the movement of homesteading. And I think that's pretty cool. And I mean, I see that a lot with homesteaders. It's like, we're really not content with just doing it ourselves. We really want to build a community of homesteaders. Absolutely. We want other people to see the value in it and pursue it if they want to. And we kind of try to inspire them to want to, and motivate them in that.
Have more people that are like-minded, I've met quite a few people, like a couple of them I've met in person, and they've become really great friends just from like one girl I met on a mom's group on Facebook, and I was like, I have goats. You should see my Instagram. And she was like, I love goats. And now she's buying 2 of my goats. So, I mean, and then I bought bunnies from another lady. And so I mean, we're really great friends now too. So I think it's really nice because, and there's people that I've never met that I talk to all the time on Instagram, and I mean, I would love to meet them in person, but they live in Scotland or somewhere where I'm probably never going to make it to them. But
it's great to have that connection with people all over the world, that we all have this common passion and love for homesteading, and we can just really relate to what they're doing. They can relate to us and we can have great conversations because I have the same thing all the time, with folks. And I think it's great. And it inspires me, to talk to people like you that are doing it because you're doing things that, I'm not even doing. And I just get inspired by it. And it gives me a lot of motivation to get out there in my garden and get after it, which I love, so I'm always encouraged by people doing it, that are out there actually just doing it. And I think it's really cool that you're sharing with others what you're doing. So I think it's pretty neat. And you mentioned Homesteaders of Indiana a few minutes ago and how, you were connecting with people there and stuff. And I think that, things like that are really great. We're seeing a large movement of that going on all across the United States. I mean, there's just conferences going on everywhere. There's these,
amazing
these groups and Instagram and Facebook all over. And they're really doing a lot of, like I said, again, motivation, inspiration, education. I'm going to be speaking at the Indiana Homesteaders Conference in October, and I love that there's all this stuff going on that's trying to bring us together and help one another. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I do too. I think it's amazing. And a lot of the in-person stuff is so much better because, well, I mean, it's not better because, not everybody can make it, but just being able to meet people in person and really pick their brains if you can, and like taking the classes, being able to do hands-on, like the soap making classes and stuff. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, it sounds like you got your hands full. I mean, so how's your family liking this lifestyle? I mean, your kids, you got kids. How old are they?
I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Oh, they're in an age right there. They're just primed for this. So they probably really love the animals, especially, don't they?
Oh yeah. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like we get a new animal and they're all over it, and then it gets, not as exciting.
Turns into work. Yeah.
Yeah. But the goats, like, they go out there, we take the babies out and they're playing chase with them, running around our yard. They go in there and cuddle with them. My oldest is like, I love watching both of my boys with animals, but my oldest is very he's very in tune with animals' needs. So like he knows, okay, don't touch them, or okay, I can cuddle you. And he's always been that way. And my youngest, his name is Hank, and he's like Hank the Tank. So he's just like rough and tough. And, I'm like, you can't just barge through the bunny hutch. You gotta like kind of go in slow because they're scared of you if you just like barrel in there. And so he's getting there now. But when we first moved here and got the animals, he was only 4, and he's having a little bit of a rough time with it. So yeah, he's good now.
Do they enjoy gardening at all, or do they enjoy the process? They enjoy just eating it. What part do they really like about that?
I don't know what happened, but neither one of my children like tomatoes. And I just think that is so wrong.
Yeah.
Me and my husband love tomatoes.
Yeah,
that's crazy. But my oldest always picks kale in the garden. He picks it right out of the garden and eats it. He always has. And my youngest likes tatsoi. So like they have their favorites. They've both been picking broccoli, and they help us, when we never try to like force them, like you have to do this, because I think that if I had to do it, I don't know if I would enjoy it as much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But you grew up around it, and you developed a love for it, and I'm sure you want to pass that on to your children, and then they have the option,
exactly.
Is this something I want to pursue?
I'm going out to the garden now, you want to come with me? And they'll be like, oh yeah. So they'll come out, and they helped us transplant a bunch of the plants and start the seeds. So they definitely, and then that gives us the time to bond, because there's no devices when your fingers are in dirt. There's no, you know what I mean? So you get to hear some interesting conversations, and it's fun.
When I look back on my childhood, some of the things I remember most to be like gathering with the family to snap beans or shuck corn or something like that. I mean, you just remember those times. And you don't think nothing of it then. As a matter of fact, it seems like it's kind of boring or whatever, and I got to sit here and do this. But I look back on that now, and that holds so much value for me. Those memories do. Yeah. And that's stuff you want to pass on for me to even my grandkids now. I just want to do that with them and let them experience that too. So because those were memories that they don't think about it now that it's that big of a deal, but I'm sure they'll look back when they're in their 40s or 50s and think, wow, that was a special time with grandpa or with mom and dad or whatever, doing that kind of stuff. So. Yeah. So I'm glad that you're, getting them out there and helping them to hopefully develop a love for it, because that's the future. I mean, if we want to see homesteading be part of a movement that lasts and changes the world. I mean, I'm big on the environment as well. I mean, I think that we need to make an impact, in this world. And I think the more people that are homesteading and growing a lot of their own food and raising their animals, it's going to make a big impact on the future of our world, and the environment. And so I love it when these kids are taking that on as well, and that becomes our future. So good job with that.
It's great too. Like, before it was like a lot of kids, like even people that homestead now, they'll say, oh, I remember gardening with my grandma, or I remember, which I do too. My grandpa Ladner, he was I can't remember how old he was, but he couldn't stand up straight. He had like a hunchback, and he still had a garden. And I remember he had this big giant walnut tree, and we pick his walnuts and like go to his garden. So I remember that with them too. But I think the great thing about this younger generation with the new homesteaders, like the first generation homesteaders now, is their kids are going to have that. So it starts that tradition now, whereas it may not have been even 3 generations back potentially. So that's awesome that it's
I agree. Yeah. And you're just seeing it everywhere right now because the movement is so strong right now. There is, I hate to call it, because we had that back to the land movement, decades ago. So I don't really call it that, but there is this movement to become, I don't even, self-sufficient, sustainable, community sufficient. People want to restore those skills of old. They want to, learn how to smoke meat and grow things. And, people are just having a desire for that now. And I think it's great. It's just more so now. I started podcasting. I started a few years ago. I think it's about 8 years ago now. And there seemed like there was a lot of people really into it now, but now I look at back then, but now I look at it and I go, wow, it's just huge now.
Even just from 2020 to now, it's I'm seeing so many more gardens. I'll be driving and there's like housing plans and little gardens, they may be fancy gardens because they have to be, but they're there. And I think that's just great.
I'm seeing these little greenhouses popping up in people's backyards all over the place. All kinds of things, and people are just really, kind of getting into it. And I think it's really neat. So, I love it that you're making the effort and you're doing what you're doing and you're helping others and inspiring others. And can't wait to see the pictures on down the line of this food forest continuing to grow and thicken up and, turn into something really, really cool. And it sounds like you're well on your way to doing that. And, sounds like you're really content with where you're at. And I love that too. I just really like that. So that's really neat. So is there anything else you want to kind of talk about before we kind of come to a close here as far as things you're doing or things you want to point to?
I think that pretty much covered it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I love what you're doing. I love that you're inspiring others. And I would love to share your Instagram link in the show notes because I think that's where you're mostly at, isn't it? Or do you have other stuff going on too?
So I've sort of dabbled a little bit in YouTube videos, but I have to do it on my phone. I'm not tech savvy, obviously. I had, wheat on my background when I got on the call. So I tried uploading my spring tour because my goal with that was more just so that I could see how things change over the years.
Yeah.
And it's like a 40-minute long video and our internet is so bad here. I've tried downloading it like 30 times and it just doesn't want to be on YouTube, I guess. I don't know.
There's a price to pay for being rural, getting out there and living that life. Sometimes you can't get all the good internet like some of us can. Yeah.
That may not turn into a thing. I don't know yet.
Sure. Well, I'll definitely point people to your Instagram and you can let them know there if it turns into a thing. I tell you, I do really encourage folks to follow you though, because you're posting some really cool stuff. And like I said, just what stuff you're doing, plus you're sharing a lot of other people's reels and things like that. You're really active in the Instagram community.
Like I said, I'm probably on there too much.
Well, I love it that you're
ideas
that
from there. I probably drive my husband crazy. I'm like, do you know what so-and-so just did? We need to try this, I just get so excited about it. And he just laughs.
I think it's great.
He's totally on board though. So it's like perfect because, if he wasn't, that would be a disaster.
You're super supportive on Instagram. I see you encouraging people all the time and helping people out all the time and just sharing their stuff. And I think that's great. So good job and keep it up. I think you're doing some fantastic things there.
Thanks. So. Yeah, you guys too. I love your podcast. I'm always telling everybody my friend came over to visit her goats and I was like, you got to listen to this podcast on your way. There's information that you need to know.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. We had a great goat podcast just a few episodes ago. So
that's the one I was telling her about.
From someone here in Indiana too. So
there was another one that was like a foraging, because I planted mulberry trees by my goat pasture and I planted the fig trees there because I figured whatever goes over into their area, they can nibble on. And then on the outside we can take. Yeah. And so I was inspired to even start implementing more of that kind of stuff. And I was like, you got to listen to those two at least on your way here. And she did. And I was like, come on.
I appreciate you pointing people to listen. And like I said, for some folks, podcasts are great. Some people spend all their time on YouTube or Instagram or something like that. But, whatever, pick your poison. I just love it that folks are getting out there and being inspired and educated. And and I appreciate what you're doing a lot. So thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Looking around, I finally see I think I need a change. The rat race, I want to flee. My world, I'll rearrange. I'm getting back to the roots of how it's meant to be. Growing gardens, picking fruit, racing livestock, living free. It's a modern homestead. folks don't understand why I wanna live this way. They've never eaten from their land like we do here every day. Snapping beans like Grandma did, sitting on her front porch. Hunting and fishing like a kid once you've done all of your chores. It's a modern homestead. Build a modern homestead. Country or city, there's a way to make this change. You gotta start today. It's a